Hello everyone. We're now at the top of the hour. Today is September 28th, 2017. I'm your host for today's webinar, Mike Lasecki. Our topic today is increasing student achievement and completion rates through undergraduate research at two-year community colleges. This webinar is brought to you by the American Association of Community Colleges and the Community College Undergraduate Research Initiative. So thank you very much for joining today. As you know, you're going to be in listen-only mode, but please use the chat window on that upper right of your screen to forward questions to our expert panelists today, and we'll have several opportunities for Q&A as we move through today's presentation. It's my privilege now to turn over to our representative from the American Association of Community Colleges, Ellen House. Ellen, would you welcome our presenters today?
Thank you, Mike. And hello, everyone. On behalf of the American Association of Community Colleges, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. AACC is pleased to partner with the Community College Undergraduate Research Initiative in hosting this webinar, and it's designed to profile undergraduate research as a high-impact practice that community colleges are engaging in as a strategy to increase student achievement and completion in STEM programs. So we've gathered a wonderful group of presenters for you today representing both administrators and faculty to discuss proven strategies, lessons learned, and student outcomes around implementing course-based undergraduate research programs. And it's my pleasure to introduce them to you. We have James Hewlett, the Executive Director for the Community College Undergraduate Research Initiative with Finger Lakes Community College. Ashley Hagler, Director of Undergraduate Research with Gaston College. Daren Mattoni, Professor of Biology and Community College Undergraduate Research Initiative co-PI with Muskegon Community College. John Selman, the Provost for Muskegon Community College, and Heather Woodson, Dean of Gaston College. And though not a presenter, I would also like to acknowledge Heather Bach, CCURI Project Director, for all of her efforts in assembling presenters and coordinating today's webinar. So thank you to Heather and to all of our presenters for sharing their time and their expertise with us today. And with that, I would like to turn the webinar over to Jim Hewlett to get us started. Jim?
Thank you, Ellen. Hopefully everybody can hear okay. So thanks for that introduction. And I guess the first thing is to welcome everybody that's on the webinar. People are coming in right now, and that's great. So it's a good number. I know several of you that are going to be on this webinar actually are pretty familiar with CCURI. But in any case, I'm going to give you sort of a little bit of a background and sort of set the context for what you're going to hear after this. And what I'm probably doing is preaching to the choir when I talk about why we have decided that undergraduate research is something that we should be implementing as a pedagogy at our community colleges. I think the arguments are pretty strong in several different reports. I've just put a few up here that I think some people are familiar with. The one in the middle, Vision and Change, is actually specific to the natural sciences and biology education, but all of these make mention of active learning also as undergraduate research as a form of a high-impact practice. And so what these reports do, including the PCAST report, which many of you are familiar with, is that they suggest that students should be doing or engaging in novel research in the first 2 years of their education. And that's sort of different from the traditional model of having someone at a four-year school, a student going through getting their background in the basic introductory courses, and then finding a lab in their junior year that they can get into to find a research experience. And so this kind of flips that on its head and is challenging us to try to figure out ways to engage students in research when they walk in the door. And so that's sort of the rationale behind why we should be doing it. The what is actually really where the challenges rest. I just wanted to point out that different agencies at the federal level are paying very close attention to the impact of undergraduate research and studying it in great detail, and new reports are coming out, it seems like, every 6 months. And so I would urge you to check out the National Academy site and look at and just search undergraduate research, and you'll find there are several new reports, one that just came out that you might find really interesting. And these are great for sort of putting together what the current state of undergraduate research is in the country, and there is mention of the role of undergraduate research in community college education. But as I mentioned before, these don't really get into the how. And I know that for many of the people who are interested in this type of webinar, they're interested in, all right, if we're going to implement this type of pedagogy, then how do we actually do it? And as a warning, I don't have the answer for you today because it's highly specific, which I'll get into in a second. But we do have the resources that can help people sort of get to that answer, which I will talk about. So one of the big challenges to understanding what the best way to do this is, so we talk to new partners that are interested in joining CCURI, and they'll ask us, well, what's the best way to do this at a community college? And that answer is difficult because there is the experience itself is so highly variable. And so what I have here is just sort of a visual that shows how the experience from a student perspective sort of fits on this spectrum. To the left, where you'd expect this very typical apprenticeship model where you've got a very low faculty-student ratio, maybe a couple students in a lab working with a PI, and then all the way over to the right where the research is embedded within a course where the students are getting credit. It's usually offered during the academic year. And then you've got sort of everything in between that you can sort of imagine how that spectrum would play out. And so any sort of meta-analysis of undergraduate research experiences becomes challenging when you have this high variability that exists. So what we set out to do at CCURI is to come up with a network that would support two-year schools in their efforts to try to engage students in undergraduate research in a variety of different ways, but primarily, definitely for sure, as they walk in the door. So they're getting 2 years of exposure to real novel research questions. And so to do that, we started small. We started with a few community colleges that went under an NSF grant to try to build models for how to build undergraduate research programs within a community college. And then we sort of grew from there. So our network has gotten larger and larger. We've had funding from the National Science Foundation, from the Helmsley Charitable Trust to build this network. And as you can see there, just a little bit of data at the bottom, almost 4,000 students participated in an undergraduate research experience as a result of their partnership with CCURI in this last year. So this will sort of give you an idea as to what that network looks like in terms of its size. The map I know is very small, but if you can see the dots, you can see it spreads out pretty well across the country, including Hawaii. And some of these partners came on very recently under our latest grant that you can see over on the right in orange, and then you can see our leadership team at the top. So this sort of represents the current CCURI network, and I will talk at the end of the webinar about how, if you are not part of this network, how you can learn more about it and give you opportunities to sort of have access to resources that can help you with your own efforts at your own institutions. So, and like I said, in going through the registrations, I think we'll have a few people who are actually on the webinar that are part of our network, so this should look very familiar to them. And right now, I'm actually going to turn it over to one of our co-PIs, Daren Mattoni at Muskegon Community College, who has built a very successful undergraduate research program there, and he's going to kind of take you through what their efforts look like. Thanks, Daren.
Thank you, Jim. Can you hear me okay? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. My name is Daren Mattoni. I'm at Muskegon Community College in Muskegon, Michigan. I envisioned undergraduate research at MCC probably about 10 years ago, but it really wasn't until about January 2015 where it finally came to fruition. So I'm going to walk you a little bit through the process that we took to get to where we're at today, and we're kind of still in the infancy yet. So back in before 2012, before we became a member at CCURI, we had a few faculty doing some independent research with students more along the apprenticeship model, focused on biofuels. In 2012, then we applied to become a partner school with CCURI, and we put together this really big team, interdisciplinary team, folks from our applied tech area, biology, chemistry. We had a 4-year partner, and we had a high school partner. And our focus was going to be on biofuels. And we had this great big plan to do this interdisciplinary introductory course to hook students into into research, to get them to do research in other areas. Well, unfortunately, our plans were too grand. It was too complex, and due to some attrition and retirements and departments focusing on other things, we kind of went into a stall mode for quite a while. Between 2012, when we became a member, and about 2015, we were doing some apprenticeship model type things with independent studies. Unfortunately, that's not sustainable.
You have been muted.
Daren, you're okay there. I'm sorry.
Your microphone has been turned on.
Okay.
Daren, you're fine. I'm sorry for the interrupt there.
No problem. Thanks, Mike. So we kind of spun our wheels for a little bit, and in 2014 I was awarded a sabbatical, and so I spent this semester growing algae and doing some research on algae and developing these research modules that eventually I could get students to teach them about research and do research more along the apprenticeship model. Well, after attending a conference in Washington, D.C. and seeing all the research that students were presenting, I figured I'm going to just do whatever I can to put a class together. So in the fall of 2014, I put together an applied research in biology class, ran it as what we call a 297, which is a test course. I had 15 students enroll in that course before the semester started, and when the semester started I had 10, which was actually better because the room we were in at that time was very small. So that was kind of our foray into the research. We really didn't know what we were doing, but the students learned a lot. They had a great time. We took 9 students to Portland, Oregon to present their research at the CCURI conference. Where we're at today is this winter we'll be running our 4th session of Biology 280. It's been very successful. The word is getting out, and more students are interested. The challenge I have right now is trying to get enough students to take this class in the fall so we can run it both semesters. But if I can at least run it one semester, I'm happy with that. So overall, it's been a long process for us, but I'm very happy with the results. Our administration is very happy with what they're seeing, and I'll kind of show you some of the results of the fruits of our labor as far as infrastructure goes, and because we began to implement research in a little bit. I want to just point out a couple of success stories that we had, and I did get permission from these students to use them, if you're wondering. Garrett Dixon was a traditional age college student who's now at Ferris State University in pre-pharmacy. Very nice young man, very motivated, very smart. He took the class twice, so I had to create a second course, Biology 281, which is Applied Research in Biology 2. So he took it the second time around and did really well, did a different project. I think he learned just as much, if not more, taking the class the second time. At the end of the second semester he took it, he sent me a really nice note. And here's a couple of quotes from him. "Dude, you've changed how I think about science and research, and thank you is not enough. I learned a lot more from helping the other students and working on my own project this year." So to me, just these 2 quotes alone show me how successful our program has been. The last student I want to point out is, and I apologize to him, I spelled his name wrong, Benicio Rodriguez. He was an early college student, and I won't get into all the aspects of early college. But his goal when he got into the early college program, he wanted to be a doctor, medical doctor. He was pre-med. He approached me about doing research. I pointed him to the chemistry department based on his research interests. He did take my research class this, I think it was 2016. His plan was to go to the University of Michigan, which I'm proud to say he is at the University of Michigan, second year there. He got a full ride scholarship. He is working in a research lab there. He's gotten several fellowships. He's a TA as an undergrad. He's doing a lot of things. He's asked to work in a virology lab next year. He's so excited about research, and he really attributes what we've done here at MCC to his success. So here's a couple of quotes from him. "Doing research at MCC gave me skills, allowing me to be a competitive applicant to work in research labs at the University of Michigan. Knowing how to learn outside of the classroom and to think like a scientist are two of the greatest takeaways from doing research at MCC." So just from these 2 young men alone, I'm very happy with the program and where we're going and what we're doing with it, and I continue to hope that we'll get comments like this from more students So that's the end of my part. Unfortunately, my provost, Dr. Selman, is unable to be here. He was off campus and is having technical difficulties connecting. So I am going to kind of talk about some of the administrative side of things, kind of from a faculty perspective, but I've worked very closely with the administration on all this. One of our big issues, or one of our big pushes here at MCC, which at all schools, is really student success and what can we do to really support student success. And we have a variety of different ways. And from the academic side, the college has been very supportive of undergraduate research as a student success model. Unfortunately, right now we don't service a significant numbers of students, but those numbers I feel are going to increase with time. So one of the things that Dr. Selman was going to talk about was some of the data that we've gotten from the surveys that students have filled out after completing Biology 280. And these are from the CCURI surveys that we have students do as part of the data collection that we do. And the self-reported data has indicated that students do feel that they've been able to increase their ability to contribute to science and do better in their science courses that they take in the future. Also, which is really important, is understanding journal articles. So we spend a lot of time on that in this course as well. As far as data related to their research experiences, many of them have planned to continue to do research. They felt that it did prepare them for transferring to their four-year institution. And some have indicated that they do plan on enrolling in master's and or PhD programs. So that's good to hear. And based on the students I had, I know that they will accomplish those goals and will enroll in those programs. These are some quotes that students put on those surveys that I think are important. One of the things that CCURI does every year is a couple times a year is provide a symposium for students to present their research to their fellow student peers. I've gotten so many good and positive feedback from students regarding this and the networking that they're able to do, and it's also very nice to see how the students get to know each other through the course of the semester, and then it kind of culminates in this symposium and seeing how those relationships have blossomed. And that's kind of what's indicated on this slide here. A lot of students do have a greater passion for science than they did when they started the class. And this last bullet point here, they're friends with most of the people in the class, and I can attest to that. I get Snapchats from them all the time, and Facebook and Instagram, and sharing with me the things that they're doing at their four-year institutions where most of them are at now. So from an administrative standpoint, and again, this is from a faculty perspective, but I work very closely with our administrators. As far as costs, I know a lot of administrators out there probably wondering, how do you fund your program? So we have lab fees associated with our classes, and the college has been very progressive when it comes to lab fees. We charge for biology labs a 1 contact hour fee as a lab fee. So that goes up maybe $5 every year. We don't get that money directly into our biology budget, but the college does give us a pretty nice supply budget, which provides supplies and things for our regular classes, but also allows me to have money for research consumables and things like that. And if there's any special items that we need, big ticket items, typically they've been very, very generous in finding money to help support the research program. So one of the big things that I've heard of the CCURI co-PI, and one of the things I struggled with when we started our research program, was infrastructure. I don't have a picture of it, but when I started this class, we shared a lab with our material science. We could get 6 students in there. It was pretty tight, and so I had to run 3 different labs through the course of the week to get all my students through. Fortunately, the college is on this big infrastructure kick. We passed some bond issues, and so we've done a significant number of remodeling and building on campus, and that included a new, remodeling all our science areas, and included a new life science wing with 6 brand new labs with undergraduate research space as well. And so the science wing is a big priority for the college. As a biology department member, I can attest to the participation that we had. They actually, I shouldn't say actually, they really listened to what we we felt we should have in this new building and the vision we had. And because we had this research program, it really, we were able to sell the fact that we wanted a research space. The building was about $9.6 million, 20,000 square feet roughly. I would say the research space that we built in there is probably about 1/8 of the square footage, so we're looking at maybe $750,000. But the college supported it because they believed in this research program we were doing. So here's a picture of the new building from the outside. This big glass area that you see, that is our research lab. Of course, while I love the lab, after you get in there, there's always a few things that you do differently, but I'm certainly not complaining. It's been amazing to work in and having the things we do. So here's kind of a view. Apologize for the messy bench top, but that's our research space. We can get 10 students in there. We also have 2 side labs that can be used as well. One of those rooms is a PCR and DNA room. We also have Class 2 biohoods as well, and all the labs and in the research space as well. So MCC is very fortunate that we have the administrative support for this, and continue to support it. And I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can to make sure that we get as many students in this class and build research into other classes on campus as well. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Daren, thank you for those. It's Mike. Thank you for those comments. We do have a couple of questions that I would like to start with at our break here. I'd like to start with you. One of the questions that came in through the chat window is, are students able to transfer that biology course, transfer it up as an elective?
That's a great question. So one of the things that I've done every time I've built a course is at least try to make sure that this class is transferred to the schools that most of our students transfer to. So I've had really good luck with it, and students that have transferred where maybe they just get general bio credit have actually talked to faculty at the schools they're transferring to and have gotten transfer credit. This does count at Grand Valley State University, one of our local state universities here in West Michigan. It does count as a 400 level research experience for students, so I was pretty pleased with that. I had another student this past spring that is at the University of Michigan, and he just asked for additional information to see if the University of Michigan will count that as a research credit for him as well. So that was definitely one of the big things that I wanted to make sure happened, that transfer credit was given. And if schools don't take it as a research elective, they may count it as a lower level biology elective or as a biology course. And actually what I found is that a lot of students take it because they want that research experience. They want that experience to kind of give them a leg up on other people when they apply to other programs. I've had students in our nursing program take it because when they go on for advanced nursing degrees, they want that leg up.
Thank you, Daren. You know, another question that just came in, a lot of interest in your presentation. Do you have perhaps syllabus and learning objectives, perhaps for your applied research course, that you're willing to share?
I'd be very happy to share a syllabus.
Okay, good. Thank you, Daren. For some reason, your volume level just went way up there. Let me just ask you one other question, and then I have a question that I've been holding back for James. So for you, Daren, have you seen retention and completion rates since you've implemented this undergraduate research experience? Have you seen an attributable effect on retention and completion?
Well, of all the students I've had in the 3 classes, the 3 semesters I taught this, I think I've had, the first semester I had one student drop just because she had too much going on and some family issues.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all the students have stayed in the course. Most of the students that have taken this are typically in their last year and are transferring. So as far as taking this course and then as far as retention goes and staying and taking more classes at the college, I believe there's been a couple. Unfortunately, I don't have any specific data on that.
Coming up later in the presentation, I just see a note from one of our presenters, Daren, that they do have some information on retention and completion. So a little bit later in the presentation day, we'll turn to that. Thank you, Daren. And I'd like to mention, folks, you can see in the chat window that one of our colleagues has suggested their biology course. She's happy to share their common course outline and course descriptions. So if you'd like to connect with Kristen, just go ahead and you can either send her a private message using the system or just send it right in the chat. I'd like to turn back to Jim Hewlett. Jim, I've got a question for you. If you could come back on. One of our colleagues want to know, is publication an expectation in your experience for community college undergraduate research? Is that set, journal publications as an expectation? Jim, I don't hear your audio at this point if you're on.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Jim. Did you hear the question for us? In terms
so
of,
that has not been an expectation. Yeah, I did hear the question. That has not been an expectation. That's a very classic Council on Undergraduate Research type of question. So I say that because where undergraduate research had its roots at a time when research productivity was one of the things that people looked at as an outcome, and that includes publications. Now, when we work with our partners, our real focus is on the research process and the students engaging in that process. But as a piece to that, we do very strongly encourage and support their opportunity to share their research results, which we think is very important. So sharing those results doesn't necessarily have to be a publication, but it could be a presentation at a conference, discipline-specific, or one that we hold, or presenting a poster. That sort of outcome is something that the undergraduate research community is very focused on, and so are we, in terms of that endpoint of being able to share. But it doesn't necessarily have to result in a publication.
Well, thanks, Daren. In the interest of time, I'm just going to forward you one more question, and then we're going to move forward into our presentation. One of our colleagues mentioned IRBs, or Institutional Animal Care and Use Committees. Are those done just depending on the circumstance? Do members of CCURI have issues with that in general? What's your sense of that?
Is that for me, Mike?
Yes,
Yeah.
Jim, it's for you. From the CCURI perspective, your knowledge of members, do they deal with IRB issues or Institutional Animal Care Committee stuff?
Yes, they do. So for a lot of the data we collect, which is mostly survey data for the impact on students, people have to get IRB approval in order to be able to administer those. But in terms of the actual research itself, people have to be aware of those issues with respect to what types of studies they're doing. So IACUC, if people are not familiar with, is basically an internal panel that approves protocols for doing research essentially with vertebrates and mammals. And so those are issues that people have to be able to work with. We've helped partners set up IRBs and IACUCs if they don't have one, and also we've also helped them with setting up the protocols for actually getting those approvals. So that is one of the things that when a new partner comes on board, we spend a lot of time in workshops talking about infrastructure. And in the early days of CCURI, we spent a lot of time focused on getting institutional capacity, which includes those types of things that weren't traditionally found at a community college, but are things that people have to think about when they're setting up their programs.
Daren, you just gave me enough information to convince me to complete the affiliate application for CCURI. I mean, that could be really valuable, having that help in dealing with some of those things. Sometimes it can be a pain. So I appreciate that comment very much. Colleagues, I'm going to take us forward into the presentation. There's a lot of activity in the chat window, people exchanging information back and forth. That's what we hope will happen in a webinar like this one. So please continue doing that. Let's turn now to Ashley Hagler. Ashley, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me now?
You sound fine, Ashley. Go ahead.
Okay, great. My microphone went away for a second. Hello, my name is Ashley Hagler. I am the Spark 3 director at Gaston College. We are a community college, just as Muskegon is, even though community is not in our name. I'd like to give you a little information about our Spark 3 program. Unlike the program at Muskegon that focuses primarily on one course, we decided to expand our undergraduate research offerings to our entire Associate of Science program. And so back in 2009, we developed the Spark 3 program. Now, SPARK stands for STEM, Persistence, and Retention via C3, which is cohorting, centralization, and curriculum change. And so if you see the slide in front of you, you can see that our program is actually pretty holistic and has a lot of different aspects to it. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to focus primarily on the undergraduate research portion of this along with the inquiry-based learning, because these two things for us go hand in hand. We have different undergraduate research experiences at Gaston College, and like Daren's Bio 280, for a while we had a capstone research course called Bio 285. That has just recently been cut from our program, primarily, but not by our choosing, because it would no longer transfer to universities in the UNC system. We are currently working to reverse that decision and get that one back. But until then, we do have other experiences for our students to participate in. We have every one of our science courses in the Associate of Science program has a course-embedded undergraduate research experience, and that is everything from General Biology 1 all the way up through Organic Chemistry and Genetics and Microbiology in our upper-level courses. Students have the option here, well, every student in our course will have an undergraduate research experience, but some students have the option, if they choose to do this, to get a more individualized, more traditional mentored experience with those faculty members, and for that they get honors credit. We do not pay our students to do research, which I know that some schools are able to do. Right now we don't have the ability to do that, so we offer honors credit because these students put in a lot of time with that. As one of our expectations for this honors credit portion of this, they do create a poster or a publication to be presented at either our local poster session that we hold each year or to be published in our local journal that we've just recently started. They can also present at CCURI sessions or national sessions, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So our poster session that we hold on our campus is the Gaston College Undergraduate Research and Creativity Symposium. We started out back in 2009 with a group of faculty who were pretty much just bored with what they were doing. And I came to Gaston College from the university setting, and so I was already working with some students in the past about doing some undergraduate research. And then one of the things that I noticed was that I was quickly getting bored in my class, and I was running out of, you can only subculture cells so many times before the students get it. So I wanted them to do something that would apply to them. So I started working with a small group of students in my class a little bit earlier than 2009, and we started doing some research. But in 2009, a group of faculty came together, and really it was a matter of having the right people in the right place at the right time. And in 2009, we developed Spark 3. We came up with the idea, and we started searching the literature. And by 2010 and 2011, we had started in putting undergraduate research into 3 of our classes. Now, those of us that were highly involved were really excited, and we really wanted to expand this very quickly. And in fact, we wanted to change the entire program at one time, but in speaking with the National Science Foundation, they warned us against that. So we started our program with only 3 courses: General Biology, General Chemistry, and Statistics. Now, this quickly spread as we began to get more involved in CCURI. We got involved in CCURI, I believe, in 2011, 2012 timeframe. We've been involved so long that I forget the exact year that we joined, and it's been a wonderful experience for us. As we have worked with CCURI, our course offerings in which we offer undergraduate research experiences have changed and have expanded. We still do them in general biology, general chemistry, and statistics, but we have now spread to genetics, psychology, microbiology, organic chemistry, non-majors biology, anatomy and phys, dietetics, foreign language, and geology. So we had a goal of spreading throughout our department by 2014, which we quickly met. We were there before 2014, and then we wanted to spread to other courses in our division by 2016. We did that. We spread to other courses by 2015, and we actually spread out of our division, which is the Arts and Science division, to include the Health and Human Services division as well, which encompasses dietetics. And that happened long before we were ever expecting. Our goal was to spread beyond our division by 2020, and clearly that has happened faster than we were even prepared for. Now, I know somebody mentioned earlier about having an IRB, and we did have to develop an IRB to bring psychology in particular on board, and for other reasons as well. So we have developed an IRB at Gaston College, and we're willing to certainly help anybody get theirs off the ground if need be. Now, I'd like to share some, just like Daren did. I am looking at this from a faculty perspective, and while I'm a data head, I also look at what really gets to me are the individual student stories. So for my students that have been doing undergraduate research, and these are not just my students, this is happening across our entire program, we have seen students that have gone directly from our program to job placement opportunities that would not have been open to them before participating in undergraduate research. We've had students that have joined national companies that are now paying for them to get their bachelor's degrees because of the undergraduate research experience, where they would not have hired somebody with an associate degree ahead of time before we started doing this. We have students that, because of their undergraduate research experience in their general biology, are now working at the wastewater treatment plant because that's where they did their research. So they saw the quality of students that we had, we saw the quality of research that was going on, and then they offered them jobs based on this. So we've had this happen with several students. This is just a picture of 3 that I can think of right off the top of my head, but this has happened and I could easily find photos for. But we've had this happen multiple times. So it does help build their resume in addition to transferring when in these courses. 2 students in particular I would like to highlight because they are perhaps what you might not think of as students who would traditionally get involved in research. Chelsea is a student who started out her college career and started out really her educational career by dropping out of high school at the age of 16. She came back at the age of 20 to get her GED and finished her GED and decided to enroll in classes at Gaston College. Because of her receiving her GED, she quickly learned that she was going to have to start the program at Gaston College in general, starting in developmental classes, which I'm sure you all know that if students start in developmental classes, they typically do not progress very rapidly, and it's very much a blow to their self-esteem, and it was for Chelsea. So one of the things that happened with Chelsea is she decided to push forward. And then when she pushed forward, she learned about our SPARK program. And when she learned about our SPARK program, she came in thinking that she wanted to do something with computers because her family had told her that the only way for her to make money in any capacity was to go into something in IT. But she really didn't enjoy computers. And she didn't actually get to our program until she was about 31 years old. So she was in and out somewhat. Now, at 31 years old, she came to us and said that, she didn't really enjoy working with computers, but she was going to stick it through because she knew she could probably get a job at the end. So we started putting her in these classes like General Biology 1 and General Chemistry, and at this point, she fell in love with research. And so because of that first research experience that she had in General Biology 1, she then went on to do research in every single course here at Gaston. She presented at multiple poster sessions, including the National Conference for Undergraduate Research, at which universities present, and it's nationwide. Everybody comes, and it's funded by the Council for Undergraduate Research. So she presented at Curry sessions, at our local sessions, at national sessions, and she graduated from our program in 2015. This year, she will be finishing up her last year at UNC Chapel Hill, majoring in biology, going ahead and looking to grad school where she wants to do a graduate degree in biology with a focus on chromatin research, which is beyond what I ever not expected for her to do, but I expected for any of my students to do, to look that deeply at something. And she has absolutely fallen in love with it. So she has actually been sending me copies of her posters that she's been presenting while she's at UNC Chapel Hill. She plans to continue to move forward to get her doctorate degree, and she wants to continue to work in research. So by participating in our research program, which is a part of CCURI, she fell in love with the field of research, and it absolutely changed what her perception of what her job possibilities and what her eventual career would be. My second student that I'd like to highlight, her name is Jana. Jana also participated in our research program, and she came to us at the age of 24. Jana was a waitress at a local food establishment around here, local restaurant, and she was a university dropout. And she, like Chelsea, and their quotes are almost identical, came to us going, I don't know what the Spark program was looking for, but I was pretty sure that it wasn't me. Because I didn't have that type of, I didn't think I had that type of mind. I didn't think I could do it. Well, in our program, she learned that she could do it. She was exposed to all forms of research. She presented multiple times at various CCURI symposiums and our local symposium. And now she is going to be graduating from UNC Charlotte with a degree in math. She plans to return to our community to teach and actually incorporate, because of her research experience at Gaston, to incorporate research into the courses that she will also be teaching. She does plan to go to grad school, but her ultimate goal is to teach and expose others as she was exposed. The last couple students that I want to highlight here, because I could go on and on about our individual students, but the last two that I want to highlight are something that we are very, very proud of. Through our research program, we have been able to sponsor two students to get them to where they need to be in order to receive the Jack Kent Cooke Transfer Scholarship after leaving our program. In the past 2 years, two of our Spark Scholars have received this, and they've received it because they had a lot of undergraduate research participation. Both of the students that you see on the screen in front of you, Madison Staves and Ryan Booth, have received this scholarship primarily because of some of their volunteer work, but mostly because they were participating in undergraduate research in the first 2 years, and which is very not typical for community colleges, and so it really made them stand out. And in the past 2 years, like I said, they have received, we've been very lucky to have these two students come out of our program. They've received over $300,000 in scholarship funds to finish undergraduate work and to go to graduate school. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my dean, Dr. Heather Woodson, so she can tell you a little bit more about the data.
So Mike, your microphone is still showing as muted. There you go. Heather, you're unmuted. Can you try speaking to us now? Folks, hold on for just a second while we confirm our audio connection.
Okay.
With Heather. Yeah.
Hello, this is Heather Woodson. Can you hear me okay?
Sure, go ahead, Heather. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Heather, we can hear you. Go ahead. Heather, we can hear you. Heather Woodson, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hey, I got a message through the chat box that at least somebody out there can hear me, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to talk to you basically about our program here at Gaston College from the administrative perspective. And so Ashley's told you a little bit about our Spark 3 program already, but as far as from an administrative standpoint, I just wanted to tell you about, as an administrator, why we think you should support undergraduate research. First of all, for me, it really it really starts with our college mission, and I'm sure that all of you out there have a college mission that's very similar in that you want to support student success. And as Jim alluded to earlier, there is all sorts of research and publications out there that support how undergraduate research really does promote student success. It is a form of active learning, which is something that is highly sought after. So that kind of goes back to those national calls for action and those peer-reviewed publications. For me, it really comes down to when you have an increased student engagement, you have increased student success. And so that's pretty important for me, not only as an administrator, but I also teach the general biology course as well. So that's for me why an administrator would want to support this. And now you can see I'm going to share some numbers here. First of all, this is our enrollment. So you can see our first enrollment number goes back to 2007-2008, and this is before we started our Spark 3 program. We've got the intermediate number there in orange, which is what our enrollment was in 2014-2015, and now you can see most recently our 2016-27 numbers from last year. We have grown to about 700 students in the program. So even though this was not why we started the undergraduate research program and all the different elements of Spark here at Gaston College, it certainly is a great byproduct, especially from an administrative standpoint. We really did start this to just improve the experience for the students we already had, but it certainly never hurts any administrator's feelings for you to also grow the enrollment while you're helping your current students. So. And then here you can see, as Ashley mentioned earlier, we have looked at our redesigned courses, our general biology, our general chemistry, and our statistics for the longest period of time. So you can see what has happened in those courses. You can see the trend lines are all going up, even though there are some minor fluctuations from year to year, but basically our course success in all these courses have gone up. And in an effort not to make the slide too busy, we did not share some of the data for the other courses, such as the genetics or the microbiology courses that Ashley mentioned earlier, but the course success rates have gone up in those courses as well. So we know students are doing better, and it's important to note that we did not change the final exams and the other major assessments in these courses. What we did do is change how we were teaching the class. We started using a very active learning approach, inquiry-based approach, and also have that course embedded undergraduate research. So the assessments are the same, and students are achieving high benchmarks on those assessments at a much higher rate. So these course success basically mean the student made an A, B, or C in the course. So you can see that again has gone up for us. And then here is our graduation for our Associate of Science program, which is where our Spark 3 program is located. So again, the goal was to make sure that we were improving the experience for our current students, but we have retained more students in the Associate of Science program. We have, as we mentioned, enrolled more students in the Associate of Science program, and we have graduated more students in the Associate of Science program. So we're obviously very happy about all those changes. As a result, the college has been recognized a couple of times recently. In 2015, we were certified by the Partnership for Life Science Education, also known as PULSE. And PULSE really looks at what colleges are doing relative to the document that Jim Hewlett mentioned earlier, which is Vision and Change. How well have colleges implemented those practices? So that is why we were certified by the Partnership for Life Science Education. And then last year we were given the Bellwether Award from the Community College Futures Assembly for the Spark 3 program, again because of all the different elements of Spark, including the undergraduate research and all the successes that we've seen with our students that Ashley mentioned, and what we've seen more globally with all of our students in that program. And then we also had something lovely happen in 2017, which was that Ashley Ashley Hegler, who talked to you just a minute ago, was recognized as North Carolina's State Teacher of the Year. It's called the Teaching Excellence Award. So she was selected as the State Teacher of the Year for the community college system here in North Carolina. So those are three pretty big major recognitions for our program. So probably a lot of you out there are wondering, how can you support undergraduate research? Of course, with relation to faculty time, release time can be given, but this is not something that has been very prevalent at the college. It has been given occasionally, but it's mainly more for administrative duties. Most of the research that we have is course embedded, and faculty are given a little bit of extra money if they are doing a mentored research outside of class that results in honors coursework. But it's a very slight amount of money. It's $57 per student, so it's very, very small. So generally, faculty do this because they believe in the process. They've seen the Janas, they've seen the Chelseas, they've seen the Maddies, they've seen the Ryans. They know the impact that this has on individual students. So they are really doing it because they're committed to student success, not because they are gaining financially or in release time for their involvement. With regards to location, we did look for opportunities to reallocate space that was not being utilized as much, and so because of that we were able to do an undergraduate research lab, and then we obviously also have formal lab spaces where students can go in and do their research when classes are not in session, and of course if they are doing course embedded research, they can use those formal lab spaces for that research as well. And with regards to funds, even though I have grants and fees listed here, and I'm going to talk about those, I think for us the most important thing was to find efficiencies in our own operations at first. For example, we looked at course fill rates in the division to see if there were areas that we could save money or things maybe that we were spending money on that we could kind of redirect those funds. So I think the first thing that you have to do as an administrator, if you're considering doing this, is looking for places in your own operations where you can create those efficiencies and look to redirect. But we have written several grants in the past, and those have been fairly successful, including funds from the National Science Foundation, and we have finished recently in the last 3 months 2 additional grants to support research. So we are continuing to be very, very active in grant writing. Like they did at Muskegon, we also looked at an increase in lab fees here at the institution, and we took a tiered approach to that so that it wasn't an across-the-board hike at the institution, but rather it focused specifically where we needed to focus those fees. And the college has been very, very generous with the Spark 3 program in equipment requests. So some costs are covered by the institution, and others are in other ways being passed along to the students occasionally. Okay. So I think we are time for a question break.
Heather, just let me check in with you. It's Mike. Can you hear my questions? I'm not sure she can. I may ask her colleague to come on and talk to us a little about questions. But here's a question that I have for the college. One of our questions came in and says, does anything other than does a course success account for anything other than an A, B, or C grade? Maybe Heather Woodson's colleague can come on and address that.
Yeah, can you hear me? This is Ashley Hegler. Can you hear me?
Thanks, Ashley. I was hoping you could come on.
Sure, no problem. For our purposes, when we look at course success, we really are looking at grades of C or better. So we are not looking at W, D, and F. So when we were looking at course success, we were really truly just looking at grades in this respect. I know somebody mentioned earlier about retention, and Heather mentioned that our retention had gone up, but one of the things I wanted to mention is that even within our general, we have a group of Spark Scholars that they are scholarship recipients, but when we looked at what happened to our retention just after putting into place the research and the courses, our course success rate among our general Associate of Science population, not including our scholarship recipients who are what we call our Spark Scholars, but our general population, the retention had gone up by 23% just by changing what we were doing in the classroom.
You know, those the numbers are very impressive. You know, those course and program enrollments, right? Everyone, I want to have those in my program. I want to see numbers like that one too. So that was very impressive, Ashley.
And I know Heather mentioned this as well. We went into this really trying to increase our retention and increase our graduation, but the enrollment change was a complete surprise to us. That was kind of a happy accident, I guess, in a way, because we realized that word was getting out that we were doing some stuff that was different, and so that really made a difference for us.
Cool. You know, in the interest of time, we're looking at time. I'm going to circle back. We're going to have a final question break at the end of next section. But one of the things I might be coming back to you about, Ashley, I'm just giving you a little warning, and some of our other presenters, is this issue of faculty release time. Now, Heather Woodson mentioned that was one possibility, but others in our chat have said it's not for their institutions. So, folks, let's hold that question. I know it's an important one. Let's cycle back to that question at our next break. Ashley, thanks for pitching in for Heather there, and hearing from both of you about your institution was very informative, so thanks. Colleagues, let's go ahead. I'd like to ask Jim Hewlett to come back on and tell us a bit more about the barriers that you've seen, Jim.
Okay, so I'm going to hopefully start with a deficit mode here and talk about things that get in the way, and then finish with some positives and some data that I know that people have been asking about with respect to completion and retention, and just some student impact data. So from the perspective of building programs, this is something that we spent a lot of time with, was trying to better understand what were the barriers to actually implementing undergraduate research. And I'm going to take you through this slide. It's a little confusing, but I think the punchline will make sense. Basically, what we wanted to understand is when trying to do something like create a brand new research course, what are the things that you have to think about that are going to be your primary barriers? Or if you have an existing course or that you want to modify, or if you want to do a summer experience. So we spent a lot of time analyzing this. And this basically what this slide is the three things that are underlined were the three major tasks that people identified that you had to address when you were trying to create a brand new course for the idea of doing undergraduate research. So obviously things like getting your administrative and department support was pretty important. But the third one, recruiting the students, because you got a brand new course that you're trying to bring students into. And underneath each of those headings, you'll see the top three barriers listed. So if I just take you down to where it said recruit students, where the top three barriers, we found that what was happening was that there were financial aid issues, credit limit regulations that were getting in the way. So these are student-centered barriers that are associated with this type of model of doing undergraduate research. As a result of this, and what we also found for doing summer experiences, which could be paid or unpaid, it wasn't surprising that 78% of our partners ultimately settled on taking an existing course and modifying that to include a research component. That model actually addresses a lot of issues that many of you are probably aware of in terms of teaching load, funding in terms of budgets, lab space. By doing it that way, our partners have found that seemed to be the way to go. And we can share other results from this barrier analysis too. I just wanted to show you this one because creating a new course was something that a lot of our partners attempted to do. Another one that we looked at pretty extensively was, is the culture of a community college conducive to actually running successful and sustainable undergraduate research programs? And so what we did is we looked at the innovation literature. We tried, because we assumed, well, we didn't assume, the literature actually said that when you try to implement high-impact practices on a large scale, that you have to look at this as being an innovation to your institution. So what are the innovative cultures? What do they look like? And if you have a culture that would not align well with something an innovation or innovative culture, then what would those things be? So this list just shows you some of the things that we know can be stumbling blocks when trying to implement something brand new to scale. And so I'm not going to go through all these. What I did was I just highlighted the one that I just had examples of, and that basically this is talking about how we react to to things that go wrong. So when we do something brand new, like a brand new course or a brand new program, a summer research experience, looking at it from the perspective of anticipating what might go wrong and being prepared to manage those risks, so that instead you're not waiting for something horrible to happen and then you are reactive, which often leads to the program either being scrapped or just basically shut down as a result of that outcome. So trying to understand if your culture is an innovative culture is really important, because if you can include training and innovation, if you can add promotion and hiring structures that promote undergraduate research, I mean, these are all the things that we know help to sustain programs going forward. So again, I've got examples of a lot of these that I know that some of you probably have many examples of as well, but I wanted to pick out that one in particular. Now on the positive side, right? So now this is a little bit of data from what we've collected from our network, and I don't think it's going to be shocking that these are the results that we got, at least a few of these. But what the undergraduate research experience does for these two-year college students is that it just gives them opportunities that didn't exist prior. And some of these opportunities are things that we know from the literature help students with identity in terms of what they want to be when they grow up, basically. It helps them with direction in terms of where they want to go on their academic path. And this is really important because we don't have the traditional, the student that comes in for 4 years and then looks to go to graduate school. In almost every case, we're looking at a student transferring to a 4-year school, hopefully with the credits all transferring, and then navigating that, and then moving on. So there's a lot of issues that can get in the way for those students. And so what the undergraduate research experience at a 2-year school provides are opportunities to sort of explore this pathway. And so, some of these things you can see here are the result of events that we run, that we host. So we do host our own conferences where students come and present their research to their peers and to the community at large. And so obviously this just opens up a door for them that didn't exist prior to that. So the other opportunity that exists is for institutions to address some institutional priorities that they may have. So on the right is essentially a self-reported set of data with respect to what students would say about their research experience and how it impacted them. So this is the perception that they would have on how it impacted them. So as an example, at the top one there, 41% essentially of the students that we surveyed said that they enrolled in an additional science course as the result of their research experience. In other words, the research experience is what drove them to seek out opportunities for more coursework. And so you can kind of read through those and you can see what those impacts look like. But on the left is actual institutional data from one of our partners. And this is where we can look at graduation rates and transfer and completion rates pre and post when research was implemented at that institution. So that's the first set of data. So before they had research at this institution in their coursework, they had about a 24% graduation rate after 3 years, which, as many people know from the community college data, that number is in line with what we know as graduation rates, which are something that everybody's trying to address. And then the next one is just looking at a research versus a non-research student in terms of their graduation rates. And then the last one, really interesting one, is these are transfer students. How long did it take for them to complete their 4-year degree? And a little over 5 years if they had no research, and actually under 4, slightly, with the research experience. And so that's a pretty significant impact with respect to what this experience is doing for students, and something to look at if you're an institution and one of your institutional priorities is to bump these numbers up, because this is just an example from one of our partners. So from all of this, what I recommend to administrators and program directors is that the first thing you're going to want to do is understand what your culture is like in terms of both research, innovation, risk, to understand better understand what are some of the barriers that you might be facing. And again, those are some of the things that we can share. And along with that, evaluate and manage risk, because if you're doing something new, you need to anticipate what those things might be, what the outcomes of those new innovations might be in terms of what you might have to deal with if something fails or goes wrong, and how to learn from those experiences and not just the reactionary thing is to shut it down if it looks too risky. And this is where I think having the CCURI network allows our new partners and our existing partners to learn from each other. That's been really helpful, we know, for those partners. The third recommendation is let your innovations incubate. In other words, if you implement something new, consider a timeline that goes beyond the scope of a semester or a couple academic years. That's something new, that those things need time. And they need time to incubate within your institution, and they also need time to incubate between institutions. So joining the network, like CCURI, allows your ideas to actually co-mingle with other people's ideas through the events that we run or just through collaboration. And when those things get together, we know that that synergy is created. And then the last thing I put on there is to try to think beyond departmental structures in terms of creating new programming. So try to break those silos. Get the people at your institution together who are the risk takers, who are the innovators, who can think big and think to scale as you put your programs together. And so with this, we actually assemble interdisciplinary teams when we bring on new partners. That includes individuals, faculty members from different departments, but we also, every team that comes in must have a decision level making administrator on their team as we bring them on board. So, and that's a result of knowing that this works in terms of actually building programs. And then this slide just here is actually data from one of our surveys that we do with our partners. And this is just looking at what the impact of students are in terms of their intentions. So we look at a little bit in terms of what how it changes their identity in terms of what it means to be a scientist, but also their intentions to complete their degree, transfer to a four-year institution, and complete a bachelor's degree in STEM. And so the biggest bars there, and that's in sort of pink or purple on my computer, is that extremely more likely is the largest percentage in terms of the impact on their intentions, which we think is something that's very important for driving completion, retention, transfer as they move on through their educational pathway. And I will share one more thing, that piece of data that we collected in our second iteration of CCURI, where we looked at the percentage of students that ultimately applied to graduate school in a STEM program. And prior to CCURI existing, we found it was about a little over 3%. And within the second iteration, which allowed for about 6 or 7 years of, time since the survey was completed, that number was up to 13%. And while that doesn't seem like a large number, 13%, that increase is pretty dramatic, and we were very proud of that. And we hypothesized that it's the creation of identity as a scientist, and understanding the academic pathway that they need to navigate is what allowed a more smooth transition as they went through this pathway and on to graduate school. And we collect lots of comments from our partners so that they can be giving advice to new partners and individuals that want to start new programs. Things like start with small projects. Don't be afraid to start with one class or one maybe even less than one class, one independent study project, and then slowly move that into a class, which is how we did it at Finger Lakes. We had undergraduate research at Finger Lakes. For us, it started with myself and 2 students working on a project focused on red-tailed hawks. Hence, every logo that you see with CCURI on it has the head of a red-tailed hawk next to it. So it just reminds me of how we started. And then the last thing I wanted to point out was that although it looks like we've been funded at a pretty high level, as you can imagine, running a network of 40-plus institutions is expensive. And so when people ask us how can we join, we ask them to go to our affiliate program, and we have the link here for you to look, or that you can use. And that essentially is that you'll go in, you'll click on the link, it'll ask you some questions about your institution and what your ideas might be. And then as part of our affiliate program, you're connected to all of our announcements, our events. You get invitations to those, and of course access to all the resources that we develop as we move forward. So if you're interested from an institutional perspective, this would be a way to sort of, I guess, when people ask us how they can join, this is the best way to do that. And then lastly, in terms of our contacts, there's my email at the top there, and Heather, who is our project director. And for those that are on this webinar who know Heather, also know that she is the driving force behind most, if not all, of the success of the CCURI program. So we always like to thank her whenever we can. And our website is there, and also our Facebook page. If you want to go into the Facebook page and like it, if you're on Facebook, we drive a lot of traffic through that page. It appears to be, in terms of social media, that seems to be the one that we've had the most success with. So you'll get updates on events coming up. You'll see pictures from our events. You'll see success stories from students and institutions that we sort of push through that Facebook page. So don't be afraid to use any of these to contact us. And I guess we are on to our final questions.
We are, Jim. It's Mike, and thank you very much for that really informative, do's and don'ts there that you've experienced over time. But a couple of questions that I'd like to forward from the chat window. And colleagues, let me say that we're perfectly on time. We're just a few minutes away from wrapping up today. But if you'll stay with us for a minute, we'd also like you to participate in a very brief survey as you exit the webinar today. So hang on with us for just another minute. Jim, here's a couple of questions that came in simultaneously, and they're the same thing. How often are students self-selected into these research-based courses versus, or is it random that they end up? Ashley made a comment, but I wonder what your own experience is about that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think the answer is complicated. It varies. To give an example, I guess, of the two extremes, when and maybe Daren can jump in on this. His research course is I think populated with students who know a lot about that course or know him and want to become part of it, and sort of they're the ones that kind of pull themselves in or into that class out of interest. Or Daren might know the student and think that they have that they might benefit from that experience, and so might recruit them. So then it's obviously that's not random. But in instances where you have an institution that has modified, say, an intro course, like an intro bio course, where all of the sections now embed some sort of a research project, that any student who takes the course obviously is going to have that experience. So I think those are probably the two extremes. So I think it varies based on what the structure of their program might be.
Daren, would you like to comment about that?
Sure. So as far as, I guess I missed the initial question. I was kind of reading through some of the chat things.
Let me repeat it for you, Daren, if you don't mind. Do students typically self-select into these research-based courses, or is it more random that they end up in a research-based course?
I found both. That I go into most of our labs that we offer for our courses, and I talk about the course and tell them if they're interested in research or going on for an advanced degree that they may want to consider taking this course. And so I get some that way, and then some students just appear on the roster that I've never met, that I've never talked to, and they just saw it in the catalog or on the schedule and looked at the course description and thought it'd be interesting. I do put up a lot of flyers around campus since it is a new course still, and we have several events around campus through the course of the year where I have a booth and I talk about it. One of the things I've done recently as well is at our orientation, I have our orientation coordinator give out these little cards that has all the biology and chemistry, things that they could do from study abroad experiences in sciences to research experiences. So I've been able to create this huge database of students who have expressed interest in science, STEM research. And so I email them.
Well, good. Thanks, Daren, for that comment. Appreciate your coming on with that. I have a question, though, follow-up for you, if you don't mind. Do you reach a capacity limit? I mean, after all, you can't have thousands of students signing up for undergraduate research. Do you turn people away? Is there a capacity limit?
I haven't had to turn people away yet. We can get 10 students in the lab. I can probably get 12 uncomfortably. My goal is to eventually get enough where I have to run 2 sections so this becomes more of my teaching load. I mean, honestly, I could teach this full time. I enjoy it so much. So right now it's still new and I haven't had to turn people away. And I probably wouldn't. If people are interested, I would do what I can to make sure that I could get them into the class.
Well, thank you, Daren. Jim, I'm going to turn the final set of questions over to you. And colleagues, just to let you know where we are, we're almost wrapping up our webinar today with some final questions for Jim Hewlett. And remember, this webinar is recorded, and you'll get a recording, link to the recording, of course. Jim, here's the question, and it's several things about collaboration. You talked about collaboration amongst CCURI members, exchanging best practices and things like that. Then you talked about encouraging interdepartmental collaboration. Do your students do, you know how research these days is a very collaborative sort of thing. Do you encourage your students to do research collaboration across departments at your institution at Finger Lakes?
Yeah, we do, and it's what we're trying to encourage partners to do that for a couple of reasons. One is from an administrative standpoint. One is from actually the scientific standpoint. So from the research or scientific standpoint, it actually models reality, and so we want students to sort of see that that's actually the case. So just one real quick example is that I have a summer research course that does work with essentially doing research on coral reef ecology, and we work with our engineers to build instruments to help us with that. So the students are working with the engineering part of this project to try to inform them on what we need for the tools, and then the engineering department next works with their students to try to build those tools. So there's that sort of a collaboration going on. But the other reason why we encourage is from an administrative perspective, we understand very well from the dean or provost level is that when programs are being built, they have to be thinking across departments because that's their focus, that's their goal. And so we know that sustainable programs have top-down drivers, and the way to get top-down support is when you're doing something that impacts more than just a single department. So it works, I guess, in both ways is why we encourage that and try to do that.
That's a very good comment about the top-down approach. Suddenly, that just rang a little bell in my head. That will help me get support if I foster that for many other reasons as well. Okay, Jim, here's another one. Let's take collaboration now up one level, so to speak, either at Finger Lakes or across the CCURI. How many members partner at the 4-year level? Do they actually do collaborative research between 2-year and 4-year institutions in your experience?
That is a great question that we get quite a bit. And I would answer it by saying that they do exist. And where they do exist, they're actually very fruitful. And so those are great to establish. But, and here's maybe the downside, they're often very much between 2 individuals. So a single faculty member at the community college with a faculty member at a 4-year institution. And that can be fine. They can have lots of great success with that. The problem is in sustaining that, we've had instances where the faculty member at the 4-year school took a job at a different institution, and it essentially, the day after, ended the collaboration. And so what we don't see very much of are institutional level collaborations between the 4 years and 2-year schools. And I think, although I cannot prove it, I think it's because the outcome or objectives or goals of having an undergraduate research program can be very different between those 2 institution types. At many of the four-year schools, they're very, very focused on external funding, research productivity and publications, where at the two-year school, very often a faculty member will get involved in an undergraduate research course simply because they think that that's the best way to actually teach the content, and they just want to do something new and different. And there isn't the focus on productivity in terms of papers and publications and grants and that. So I can't say that that is the reason, but I think the cultures, from a research perspective, the research cultures can be very different between those two institution types, and I think that can sometimes get in the way of developing institutional level collaborations, not just the faculty member level collaboration.
You know, I think you're absolutely right about that, Jim. We've seen that here, you know, in our location in Arizona with our community college district. Things work on a faculty-faculty relationship as opposed to an institutional relationship. So I totally agree with you. Thank you for that comment. Colleagues, we're right at the end of our webinar today, and as we wrap up, I'm going to go back one slide. As you've already seen by just looking at the chat window, our presenters are very open to being contacted. Of course, Jim Hewlett, Heather Bach with the organization, and you can see the other links there too. So I encourage you to follow on this discussion. We didn't solve everything today. We didn't solve the question of faculty release time. For some of us it works, and others it's really another problem. So in the future we'll solve that problem someday. I would like to thank our presenters. Let's start by thanking Ashley Hagler, Daren Mattoni. I'm not sure if is it Mattoni, Daren, or Mattoni. Ellen House, of course, from the AACC, Heather Bach and Heather Woodson, and finally Jim Hewlett. Jim, we really appreciate your organizing this and leading the presentation for us today. Colleagues, that officially ends our webinar. Look for the link to the recording that's coming to you, and now I'm going to launch the survey. When I do this, for most of you, occasionally a Mac will act a little bit funny. The survey will open in a new browser window. For some of you, you may have to click on the Browse To link to open it. And presenters, please don't take the survey or close it because that will effectively close it for others. Colleagues, that officially ends our webinar today. I'll leave the system open for a few more minutes for any last comments. Let that survey remain open. Thank you again for joining today's presentation on undergraduate research. Going on to mute and ending the recording.